Are you mad? You can't just sell it without consulting us? Without telling us?" Amber, her face pale, cried, "My wedding, my plans, you've ruined everything." Logan, for the first time, spoke up, his voice sharp. "This is unbelievable, utterly irresponsible." I simply met their gazes one by one. "It was my house," I stated calmly, "purchased with my husband. It was my decision to sell, just as it was my decision to draft a new will, ensuring my assets are distributed according to my wishes, and assigning a new power of attorney, none of which, I assure you, involves any of you." I looked directly at Richard. "And as for your concerns about my financial management, perhaps you should focus on your own, Richard. I'm aware of your substantial investment losses, your second mortgages, and your attempts to access my accounts. My decision to safeguard my assets was a direct response to your opportunistic machinations." The air crackled with their outrage, but my words, backed by undeniable facts, had pierced their carefully constructed facade. Richard's face went crimson, Vanessa gasped, and Amber simply stared, tears finally welling in her eyes, not for me, but for her ruined wedding. It was over. The power had shifted. The victim had become the victor. The fallout was swift and devastating for them. The sale of the beach house, confirmed by Jennifer Maxwell with a rapid closing, hit them like a tidal wave. Richard's already precarious financial situation collapsed entirely. The weight of his failed development and his mounting debts, now exposed, led to inevitable bankruptcy. The humiliation was immense, professionally and personally. Vanessa, furious at Richard's deceit and the financial ruin he had brought upon them, packed her bags and moved out, initiating divorce proceedings. Their marriage, built on superficiality and greed, disintegrated under the pressure. Logan, observing the chaos and instability, abruptly broke off his engagement with Amber, citing unforeseen family issues and, quote, "an unstable environment." Amber, stripped of her wedding, her fiancé, and the beach house she felt entitled to, spiraled into a deep depression, her world of materialistic expectations shattered. They tried to appeal, to cajole, to threaten, but I held firm. My resolve was unyielding. The time for reconciliation, for apologies, had passed. They had chosen their path, and I had chosen mine. With the proceeds from the beach house sale and a new sense of liberation, I reclaimed my life with serene purpose. I sold the brownstone as well, a property that felt too large, too full of old memories and the ghosts of past expectations. I moved into a beautiful, light-filled condominium in Cambridge, modern and minimalist, a stark contrast to the heavy antiques of my old life. It was a space designed for my peace, my autonomy, my future. Dr. Matthews, during a follow-up visit, commented on my remarkably improved blood pressure and overall health. "You seem to have shed a great deal of stress, Eleanor," she noted, and she was right. I felt lighter, unburdened, finally free to be the protagonist of my own life. I nurtured my bond with Thomas, who had always been my steadfast ally, supporting his burgeoning photography career with quiet pride. A year later, the dust had begun to settle, leaving behind a profoundly altered landscape. Richard, after the bankruptcy and the collapse of his marriage, found himself at rock bottom. But in that void, something new emerged. He started volunteering for a local nonprofit, helping at-risk youth, a far cry from his previous high-stakes world. He reached out to me, tentatively, genuinely apologetic, not for the money, but for the disrespect, for losing sight of who I was. Vanessa, having gone through her own painful separation and a period of self-reflection, also sought me out. Her apology was different, more introspective, acknowledging her own complicity and ambition. I set clear boundaries with both of them, allowing for cautious, new connections, but always on my terms. Our relationships were irrevocably changed, not restored to their prior state, but slowly, painfully, rebuilding on a more honest foundation. Amber's journey was the most dramatic. Her initial devastation led her to therapy, a painful but necessary process of confronting her entitlement and materialism. She started graduate school for art history, a path she'd previously dismissed as unprofitable, finally seeking something beyond surface value. One quiet afternoon, she called me, her voice soft and hesitant. "Grandma," she began, I was going through some old boxes, and I found your knitted dolls. I was going to throw them out again, but for some reason, I just picked up the biggest one, and something felt heavy inside. I cut it open." She paused, her voice thick with emotion. "I found it, Grandma. The diamond. It's beautiful. I took it to a jeweler. I had them set it into a pendant for you." A few days later, she arrived at my new condo, nervous and slight, holding out a small velvet box. Inside, glinting softly, was the diamond, now a simple, elegant pendant. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her eyes brimming. "I was so blind, I never saw what was truly valuable. I never saw your Dalek value." She placed it in my hand. It was a small, quiet moment, but it spoke volumes. This was not the return of a material object. It was the return of respect, of understanding, of a deeper connection. Months later, I hosted a small gathering at my new condo, a quiet affair with Thomas, Richard, and Amber. Thomas, radiating confidence, showed me his latest photographic works, his passion now his profession. Richard spoke with genuine enthusiasm about his nonprofit work, his eyes clear and purposeful. Amber, still subdued, but with a new quiet strength, engaged in a thoughtful conversation about art history. We talked, we laughed, we shared stories. The old family dynamic, fractured by betrayal, was gone forever, but in its place, something new, something more honest, was slowly forming. Relationships built not on obligation or expectation, but on genuine respect, newfound self-awareness, and the hard-won understanding of true value. I sat there, looking at them, at the life I had meticulously rebuilt, and felt a profound sense of peace. I was Eleanor, unapologetically, finally the protagonist of my own story. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching. The day my granddaughter called my handmade gift cheap was the day I realized my family had betrayed me, but they had no idea. That day was also the beginning of their own downfall. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. It helps me know when you're listening, and I appreciate your support more than words can say. For years, I, Eleanor, had been the bedrock of my family. A widow for nearly a decade, since my beloved James passed, I had poured my energy, my love, and frankly a good portion of my inherited wealth into making sure my son Richard, my daughter-in-law Vanessa, and my grandchildren Amber and Thomas wanted for nothing. My life revolved around them. James and I had built a wonderful life together, filled with quiet joys and deep affection, culminating in our cherished Cape Cod beach house, a place where his ashes were scattered and every grain of sand held a memory. Our elegant Boston brownstone, too, was filled with history, a testament to our enduring love and hard work. I was a generous woman, perhaps too generous, always quick with a loan, a gift, or an offer of help, believing that family was everything, that this was how we showed love. My days were peaceful, filled with gardening, volunteering, and the occasional visit from my grandchildren. I cherished the simple things, the warmth of a homemade meal, the laughter of those I loved. I never asked for much, only respect and affection in return, and I truly believed I had it. Then came Amber's 25th birthday. It was a lavish affair, held at a rented Beacon Hill townhouse, all crystal and champagne flutes, precisely the kind of ostentatious display Vanessa adored. I had spent weeks lovingly crafting a set of knitted dolls for Amber, each one unique, a true labor of love. Tucked deep within the largest doll, nestled in its soft, woolly heart, was a small, exquisite diamond. It wasn't just any diamond. It was the stone from the pendant James had given me for our 50th anniversary, a piece I had carefully reset into a delicate, new design, intending it as a deeply personal heirloom for Amber, a symbol of enduring love, to be found and cherished later. I presented the gift with a nervous smile, my heart thrumming with anticipation. Amber, with her perfect blonde hair and polished nails, tore open the wrapping paper with an air of practiced indifference. Her eyes scanned the handmade dolls, then her face contorted into a look of thinly veiled disgust. "Oh," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, loud enough for a dozen guests to hear. "Knitted dolls? How? Quaint, Grandma. I mean, they're really cheap, aren't they? I was hoping for something from Tiffany's, for my 25th. This is a bit tacky." A ripple of laughter, like a wave of cold water, washed over the room. Richard chuckled, Vanessa let out a shrill, forced laugh, and even Amber's fiancé Logan, a perpetually sneering young man from an old money family, offered a patronizing smirk. My cheeks burned, the air left my lungs. My meticulously crafted gesture of love, imbued with so much personal history, had been publicly ridiculed, dismissed as cheap and tacky by the very person I intended to cherish it. My throat tightened, and I could feel tears prickling behind my eyes, but I swallowed them down. I remember muttering something about hoping she'd enjoy them, my voice barely a whisper, before I retreated into the periphery, utterly humiliated. I left the party early, the image of Amber's dismissive face and the sound of my family's laughter echoing in my ears, a cruel symphony of my worst fears confirmed. Back in the quiet sanctity of my brownstone, the silence was deafening. I felt hollowed out, as if a vital part of me had been scooped away. The pain was physical, a sharp ache in my chest. As I sat there, trying to make sense of the cruel spectacle, a single, stray email notification on my old desktop caught my eye. It was from Amber, forwarded to me by accident, an email chain with Richard, Vanessa, and Logan. My fingers, trembling slightly, clicked it open. My heart plummeted. The subject line read, "Cape Cod wedding plans, renovation ideas." Inside, Amber was discussing her vision for my beach house, detailing extensive, expensive renovations without a single consultation with me. There were attached estimates for a new deck, a re-landscaped garden, even a potential expansion of the master suite. My beach house, the place where James and I had built our dreams, where his spirit lingered, was being appropriated, planned for, and discussed as if it were already hers, or theirs. They were not asking for permission, they were simply planning. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a calculated takeover. That email was the turning point. It wasn't just about the doll or the public humiliation. It was about everything. It was about disrespect, entitlement, and a chilling lack of regard for me, my feelings, my wishes, and my property. The pain, once a dull ache, sharpened into something cold and hard. Something shifted deep inside me. The accommodating, generous Eleanor, who always sought peace and harmony, began to recede. In her place, a steel spine began to form, rigid and unyielding. The warmth in my heart that had always been reserved for my family began to harden into a calculated resolve. I felt a surge of indignation, righteous and potent, unlike anything I had ever experienced. They wanted to take my house, my memories, my financial security. They wanted to reduce me to a senile old woman to be managed, not on my watch. My first call, after a night of sleepless, tearful contemplation, was to Judith, my oldest and dearest friend. She listened patiently, her quiet wisdom a balm to my raw nerves. "Eleanor," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "you've given them your whole life. It's time to reclaim it. You deserve more than this." Her words validated the nascent fury bubbling within me. Then, a few days later, my grandson Thomas, sweet, observant Thomas, came to visit. He was quiet, unassuming, always with his camera in hand, pursuing his passion for photography, a stark contrast to Amber's brash materialism. He looked uneasy. "Grandma," he started, his voice hushed. "I overheard Dad talking. He's in a lot of financial trouble. That Westridge development he invested in went belly up. He's got second mortgages on everything. And he was talking to Aunt Susan, trying to figure out how to access your accounts, saying you weren't, of sound mind, enough to manage your own money. Thomas's words were a cold, hard splash of reality. It wasn't just entitlement. It was desperate opportunism, cloaked in false concern. This was not about love or family. It was about money, my money, and their perceived right to it. Richard's attempts to access my accounts, his insinuation about my mental state, it all clicked into place. The betrayal was complete. The shift from a heartbroken victim to a resolute strategist was instantaneous and absolute. I felt a quiet fury, a deep, burning resolve that settled into my bones. I was going to fight back, not with anger or vitriol, but with precision, with strategy, and with the full force of the law. My next call was to Marcus Cooper, my estate attorney, a man of integrity and sharp legal acumen. We met in his quiet, wood-paneled office. I laid it all out. Amber's humiliation, the email regarding the beach house, Thomas's revelations about Richard's financial woes, and the creeping dread I felt about their intentions to manage my future. Marcus listened without interruption, his gaze steady and sympathetic. When I finished, he simply nodded. "Eleanor," he said, "you have every right to protect yourself and your assets. We can ensure your autonomy is not just maintained, but fiercely defended." He advised me to meticulously document everything, every phone call, every insinuation, every perceived slight, every financial request. I went home and bought a new set of leather-bound notebooks, turning them into my private ledger of their transgressions, dated and detailed. I started photocopying every bank statement, every deed, every legal document pertaining to my properties. I ensured all my crucial documents, the deeds to the brownstone and the Cape Cod house, my will, my financial statements, were in a secure, fireproof safe deposit box, away from any prying eyes. Marcus then guided me through setting up entirely new, private bank accounts, transferring funds, and changing all my direct deposits. I had to ensure Richard, who had once been granted temporary access to help with some estate matters after James passed, could no longer touch a penny of my money. We drafted a new will, making Thomas the sole executor and granting him a significant early inheritance, recognizing his loyalty and kindness. A new power of attorney was established, naming Judith as my representative, ensuring that my true wishes would be respected, should the need arise. It was a methodical, almost surgical process, driven by a quiet determination. I also scheduled an appointment with Dr. Matthews, my physician, for a routine checkup, subtly ensuring she documented my mental clarity and excellent cognitive function. I knew they would try to question my competency, and I was preparing my defenses. The most profound decision, the one that truly solidified my resolve, was to sell the Cape Cod beach house. It was a painful choice, a wrenching one, as that house held a lifetime of precious memories with James. But it had become a symbol of their entitlement, a battleground for their greed. Selling it would not only prevent them from appropriating it for their wedding and future schemes, but it would also provide me with an unassailable financial cushion and sever a tie that had become a source of profound anguish. Marcus introduced me to Jennifer Maxwell, a discreet and highly competent real estate agent known for her rapid, private transactions. She understood the urgency and the need for confidentiality. Within weeks, the beach house was quietly listed, and within a month, an offer was accepted. The closing date was set for just a few weeks before Amber's planned wedding. I kept it all a secret, a carefully guarded weapon. Meanwhile, oblivious to the carefully constructed legal fortress I was building around myself, my family's behavior escalated. Richard and Vanessa's calls became more frequent, laced with thinly veiled concern about my increasing forgetfulness. They started openly discussing moving me into a lovely assisted living facility in the suburbs, a place I had never expressed any interest in. Amber, high on her wedding planning, would call to discuss her vision for the beach house, sometimes even mentioning specific contractors she was considering, all without a hint of irony or the slightest suggestion of consulting me. Logan, ever the snob, made a few snide remarks about family stability to Thomas, suggesting my age was making me eccentric. They were digging their own graves, providing me with endless ammunition, each dismissive comment or manipulative suggestion strengthening my resolve. They saw me as a vulnerable, elderly woman, ripe for the picking. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The climax arrived with chilling predictability. A week before the beach house closing, and just a few weeks before Amber's wedding, Richard and Vanessa called, requesting an urgent family meeting at my brownstone. Thomas had alerted me. He suspected an intervention. I agreed, my heart a calm, cold stone. I was ready. They arrived, accompanied by Amber and Logan, all dressed in somber, performative expressions of worry. They sat on my antique settee, a united front of manufactured concern. Richard, clearing his throat, began, "Mother, we've been very worried about you lately. Your memory, your finances. We think it's time we all had a serious talk about your future." Vanessa chimed in, "Yes, Eleanor, we just want what's best for you. We've found a wonderful community, Meadowbrook Manor, just beautiful, full of activities." Amber nodded gravely, adding, "It's really for your own good, Grandma. We just want to make sure you're safe and taken care of." Logan, surprisingly, stayed silent, looking more uncomfortable than usual. I listened patiently, my hands folded calmly in my lap. I let them ramble, paint their picture of my supposed decline, their selfless concern. When they finally finished, the room fell silent, waiting for my capitulation. I took a deep breath. My voice, when I spoke, was steady, clear, and utterly devoid of emotion. "Thank you for your concern, Richard. Vanessa, I appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts. However, I assure you, my memory is perfectly intact. My finances are secure, and my cognitive faculties have been recently confirmed as excellent by Dr. Matthews." I paused, letting that sink in. Their faces shifted, a flicker of confusion. "And as for the Cape Cod beach house," I continued, "I trust you'll be able to find a suitable alternative venue for Amber's wedding. Because, as of next week, the beach house will no longer be mine. I've sold it." The silence in the room was absolute, profound. Their faces, just moments before arranged in masks of worried solicitude, contorted into expressions of shock, then disbelief, then pure, unadulterated fury. Richard spluttered, You sold it? How could you? That was for Amber's wedding, our family legacy." Vanessa shrieked, "Eleanor,